All right. So we're gonna start today with some props. If you have blocks, you're welcome to use those for supported fish. You can also use pillows instead of blocks, or you're welcome to use your bolster. Okay, so I'll show you a couple of different ways and just choose whatever lands best with you. If you're using a bolster, I suggest propping it up with a block or books at the far end so you have a bit of a ramp. You'll sit your lower back next to the bolster and just lie over top, taking your arms wide. All right, if you are using pillows, you're just gonna grab a couple of pillows that you don't mind being on the ground, I suppose. And then place those underneath your shoulders. Okay. So once again, you're gonna lie over top of the props. This time, the props are gonna be purely underneath your chest. So lifting your heart up so that your head can tilt backwards. Chin slightly lifted as well. Know that you can add more props if you need maybe a little bit more lift or opening, or take the props lower or take some of them out if you're feeling this a little bit too much in the front body. Legs can be butterflied, so sometimes it can feel nice to bring soles of the feet together and let your knees come out wide. I personally like to extend my legs long, like Shavasana legs. But if your lower back gets a little bit sticky, know that you can always bend your knees and plant your feet. Just make sure that the highest part on your body, or the part that's being lifted, is really your heart center. And then before we fully move into stillness, since tonight's practice is all about just connecting into our physical body, we're gonna add in just a tiny bit of movement, okay? So start just by rocking your head side to side, massaging out the back of your skull, allowing your chin to drop to the left and over to the right. And then the next time that your chin comes up through center, pause. Reach your left fingertips out, like you're reaching for something beside you. Press the back of your hand into the ground so your elbow might lift. And then gently take your chin over to your right shoulder and pause here for 3 full breaths. At the end of your third exhale, lift your chin back through center and soften into your left arm. Other side, extend through your right fingertips. Find that length down your entire arm, and then just allow your chin to dip over to your left shoulder. Your shoulders stay soft and supported as you take these 3 long and slow, mindful breaths. All the way back up through center after your third exhale. Now you're welcome to play with that movement again if that felt like it really drew you into your physical body. And just notice the lengthening, the opening that's being created. But know that you're also welcome to just pause with hands out wide, elbows soft, heart open. Once you do settle into stillness, we're just going to bring some more awareness to the internal. So you've spent probably a majority of your day in the external world, maybe interacting with others, whether that was virtually or in person. listening to other people, navigating their needs and their wants. And so this time here on your mat is to just start to find that intuitive knowledge of yourself. So listening to your own needs, listening to your own wants, maybe where you need to pay a little bit more attention. And that can be a really big ask, especially when we're not used to putting ourselves as a priority. And so we're simply just going to start with cultivating a relationship with being okay with stillness. So just start to notice how you feel as you've landed in this shape. Maybe any sticky spots that are starting to get louder, or some tension that's left over in your body from the day or the week. And now our natural reaction is to do. It's to fix, to create, to find action. And so my challenge for you here is to just simply breathe. So noticing those areas of tension or tightness. And then I just want you to take a breath. You can count for 4 in, and maybe 4 to 6 out. And at the end of that breath, you may take another breath. Really intentional and slow. And then take one more. Very mindful breath where you're really aware of sensation. Notice maybe how that original space in your body is feeling. Sometimes we simply just have to sit with the feeling, with the sensation, and give it space to pass. And so for the last little bit of this pose, we're just going to sit in stillness, knowing if you need to adjust, you're not wrong for doing so, or you're not, not practicing perfectly. You can always adjust, but just taking that mindful moment before the adjustment. So just seeing if you can sit with it. Maybe it disappears, maybe it eases. But if it's not easing and it's getting so loud that you really can't ignore it, that's also the language of your body. And then it's a place where you can respond, not from your head, but really from knowing intuitively in your body. So I'm just going to leave you in stillness for about 1 more minute, and silence on my end so that you can just simply listen and breathe. if you've wandered away from your body, just bring your attention back inwards. Notice what's happening without bringing judgment with you, just awareness. We are going to stay on our backs, but we'll have to lift up out of this pose to bring our blocks and props with us into the next. Okay? Instead of lifting straight up, which is going to strain the neck and a bit of the back, gently just roll yourself over to either side. So it could be your favorite side. And then you'll use your hands to just press your upper body up. You can take your bolster or your pillows off to either side and then come all the way back down onto your spine. Plant your feet once you've landed on your spine and just walk your heels out wide and allow your knees to drop in towards one another. Bring your hands over top of your belly and just feel the rise and fall of your breath as your body expands with the inhale and softens with the exhale. Heel toe your feet back towards center so that feet are about hip width distance apart. You can choose to use a block, your bolster, or your stacked pillows for this next pose. Supported bridge variation. Pick your hips up and slowly slide your prop underneath the backs of your hips. An alignment that we run into here is sometimes that overextension of the spine. So just place your hands onto your belly if they've left and feel your hip bones pull up towards your bottom two ribs. So there's a slight pelvic tilt. You want to think about knitting your hip bones and ribs towards one another. You may have to adjust your prop to be further down your spine so that it's really on the sacrum of the spine rather than the vertebra. So it's that hard kind of plate beneath the lower back. But just play with this until you find a comfortable space to land. I'm going to offer you some different variations. So the one you're in right now is a very grounded pose. You're welcome to come back here at any point if the other variations are just feeling like a little bit too much or too long. Second variation is one at a time. Draw your knees into your chest. And you're going to feel your tailbone start to rise up to the sky. Arms can wrap around your shins or even the backs of your hamstrings. It might feel nice for some to take knees wider, so more in that supported happy baby. Heels still soft though towards your hamstrings. Or additionally, a supported plow pose. You can always extend your toes overhead, lengthen out your legs, and just wrap your arms behind hamstrings. All of these variations are going to create space in your lumbar spine and your lower back. And if you ever need to shift or move, know that that's always an option. When you first move into your pose, it can sometimes be overwhelming with all of the things that you're feeling or what's coming up for you. So one by one, you can just attend to each of those little maybe sentences or language pieces that your body is sending you. And just almost like you're reading this page of your body within this shape. You don't have to change the words or the lettering, just simply finding awareness. Notice if you're lingering in one area for a really long time. Can you broaden your perspective to just see other places within your body? Just notice. And essentially be a container of holding space for yourself. We're going to take about 5 more breaths. This flexion of the spine. Maybe you tune in to that rise and fall of your chest and your belly. If your legs are extended overhead, just gently bend into your knees, heels towards your glutes. And you can take your feet down one at a time to meet back in your supported bridge. If it feels okay for your low back, you can always lengthen out, bring your arms overhead and reach your toes long. And just take a big welcoming stretch. If you need to linger there for a little bit longer, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll come out of this pose the same way that we came in. Feet planted, your hips will pick up and just slide your prop off to either side. Come once again to this neutral place where your feet are resting a little bit wider, knees drop in, and a long lower back. It's really subtle, the transition, but can you feel what's happening as you shift to neutrality? You might even notice these urges to move. And so sometimes those urges are to fast pace through the stillness or the discomfort. And so I just want you to pause for maybe 2 or 3 more breaths and just notice how your body has its own rhythm of which it lets go. And now if you still feel called to movement, you might just gently drop your knees left and right, rinsing out any residual tension. And then when your knees come back through center, you can pause and heel toe your feet hip width distance. Moving in towards twists. And with that being said, I invite you to take whatever variation you feel called to. So if the one that I cue doesn't feel right tonight, that's okay. All right. So you're going to take one of your pillows between your knees, and this is going to help keep your knees about hip width distance. Optional to take your other pillow out to the right. Okay. With your feet planted, just gently walk or slide your hips over to the left. And then hug your knees in towards your chest, and you should feel your low back expand against the ground. Bring your arms out wide, and then gently lower your knees all the way over to the right. The bottom pillow you might not need, but it's always there if, say, there's a space between where your legs land on the ground. Just nestle pillow or blanket in there so that you have that extra support. Both shoulder blades connect to your mat with equal weight. And if it's comfortable for your cervical spine, start to draw your chin to the opposite side than where your knees are currently laying. Arms can be out wide, cactus, diamond overhead, or you might even rest one of your hands onto your thighs. And so what's really unique about this practice in particular is that there is no right or wrong. Okay, so depth, variation, those are all yogi's choice. And with this open-ended structure, it can feel really overwhelming of what to choose. But that's the point of this practice, is to actually let your body guide you. Okay? So when we sit in our minds, that's where too much information, worry, what ifs, expectations, judgments, they all pile on top of one another. And in yoga, we actually just let this go. Okay? And we start to just listen. What is my body saying? How does this feel? And if that even seems really complicated, just notice if your body is tense. If you can relax into some of those muscles and spaces of the joints, that's a good indication your body is pretty safe and it feels okay to let go. If you notice that your whole body feels tense and your jaw is smashed together and your eyes are crunching up, that's your body telling you it's fighting right now. It's fighting this shape in this moment. And if you can't quite settle or soften, maybe just take out some of the intensity. So just starting to get this feedback from ourselves that doesn't necessarily use words. Remember to breathe. Your body is naturally going to just keep breathing, but remember to bring that mindfulness back to your breath, especially when you feel overloaded or overwhelmed by, funny enough, the loudness of silence, or when you feel maybe just overwhelmed with your thoughts or sensations. And just see what happens when you take 3 or 5 mindful breaths. Your full attention on riding those waves of your inhales and your exhales. Gently bring your chin back up through center and take your time to lift your knees away from the earth. You can always move your props off to the side. Shift your hips back into the middle of your mat and just extend your legs for a moment. Hands can come down like a mini shavasana or over top of your belly if you find that connects you internally. So even in this small way, can you accept that you're just embracing this pause? And that these simple 5 breaths are an act of resilience, of listening. When you feel ready, and that usually is when sensation is dissipated and kind of feel like you're back to neutral, just simply gonna find the other side. So you can bend your knees again and take your pillow between your thighs. Make sure to shift your hips over to the right and move, if you've used it on the first side, move your other pillow all the way over to the left. Knees will hug in, and then slow lower of knees over to your left. These first few breaths of your twist, you might need some shuffling or movement. And this is a way of communicating with your body, of almost like a guess and test. So moving somewhere and just checking in, knowing that you might have to adjust a couple more times. And so with that being said, once you do land in this pose, perhaps consider the pressure that we put on ourselves to get it right, to start something new and be perfect at it, or the pressure to not fail or falter or make mistakes. And can you use this moment in your yoga practice as a way of healing some of those past patterns of belief or habit, that it's okay to adjust and move if you need, to kind of get that feedback and just find where you need to land in that next moment. On the other side of this is that sometimes we get that feedback and we jump into fixing. And we're so good at changing that we never really allow ourselves the space to settle and even be a little uncomfortable for a moment. Because change will always have some level of discomfort. And so it's just finding this balance between allowing yourself movement and shifts, but also allowing yourself stillness, just to listen and make sure that we're not moving out of habit or out of discomfort. For the next little bit, see if you can direct your attention inwards. And if you falter and move elsewhere outside of your body, as soon as you notice that, just offer yourself the space to come back without judgment or going into it. Just welcome yourself back home. So the stillness and silence of your physical body is often going to connect you deeper to your mental body. So you might become more aware of what thoughts are running through your mind on this day or in this moment. You might notice that some thoughts are more important than others. They're showing up over and over again. But as we slow down the physical body, we get this opportunity just to listen to what is that internal voice saying. It doesn't mean the internal voice is always right, but it just gives us a perspective. It's almost like you're watching a movie across the blank screen of your mind of what's important at this point. What is your mind going back to? And so for the last few breaths on this side, maybe just taking note of what's coming up. You don't have to analyze it or give reasons, just notice. Still stepping out of that urgency to do or fix, but just simply we're holding space for our thoughts. gently over the next few breaths. And start to bring your chin through center. Lift your knees away from the earth. Release out any props and just lay flat on your back and extend your legs long. Allow your body to come into this pause where your body gets to let go of tension and sensation at its own pace. So really trusting your body to move you. Now, without thinking, and I know that's a dangerous statement at times, but without thinking, I just want you to move in a way that feels good. So some examples might be bringing your knees into your chest, or rocking your knees side to side. Maybe taking a big elongated stretch again. So these next few breaths are yours to just move through if your body is craving that. And eventually, you'll roll yourself over to either side, whichever you just naturally incline towards. You'll land in fetal. Use your hands to press yourself up. And then we're going to set up our props as they might be useful in this next pose. So if you have a bolster, you're going to set it up like we did at the start of class on that angle. If you have pillows, you're also just going to place them behind you. So they're going to be maybe about half a foot away from your toes, okay? So you'll start in tabletop, and this is just gonna give you some movement. If you need additional movement of the hips or the spine, you're welcome to just flesh that out. A couple of options for this next pose. So heroes, you can take your knees together, toes together, and then separate your toes wide. And you can sit your hips back so that they land right in between your heels. If you have knee sensitivities like I do, you might take a block or even a couple of pillows to sit on so that there's less weight on your knees. You're welcome to stay upright, or you can always play with leaning back. So for some of us, we'll land on hands. For others, it might be down onto forearms, or if you have that bolster or enough space, you may even lay all the way back. Now this is for people whose knees are quite open, and there should be no pain or pulling in the knees. If that doesn't feel right for you, take your big toes together and knees wide. So this one's called saddle. It's really similar, but it's a little bit more gentle on the knees. So again, you can stay upright or you can lean back. Third option for my friends whose knees are just not having any of this tonight is child's pose. So same as saddle, toes together, knees wide, but you'll actually dip forward. If any of the poses, whether it's this class or any future classes, don't work for your body, just choose something that does. I won't be offended. Remember, this is about listening to you and your body. Especially with a pose like heroes or saddle. Sometimes a lot of sensation comes with it. So this is a really good tool to notice where your mind goes. So sometimes those past patterns of how we talk to ourselves show up, or doubt creeps in, or worry. And so it's really beautiful if you feel safe with where you are to just play with taking, maybe it's a breath or 3 breaths or 5 breaths, but just recognizing that your nervous system is starting to pick up in energy, and we just want to calm the nervous system. So that can be deep breathing, keeping your attention within your body rather than the avalanche of your mind. I promise we're not here for a really long time. It is a shorter pose. So even if you have to move or adjust, can you do so in a way that's really grounded? Okay, so it's slow and it's informed. It's not necessarily a reaction. It's a necessary and gradual movement and exploration. About 1 more minute left, and that's just about 8 to 10 breaths. So maybe you just breathe with me, count of 4 in, and a count of 4 out. And just repeat in this steady rhythm. For my friends that are all the way down, please don't rush up. Take your time to come up onto forearms and then up onto your hands. You'll walk your fingertips forward if you're coming out of heroes or saddles, or walk your hands back from child's pose to land in tabletop. And then gently scoop your feet out to either side. And just extend your legs out in front of you. Okay. There might be that urgency to roll the ankles or point or flex your feet, so just pause for a moment. Trust that your body is moving and releasing at its own pace. If upright feels a little bit too much, you can always lean back as well. And then if you do need any of that movement, you're welcome to bring it in now. So just giving yourself some time to sit with sensation and transition, not having to speed it up. We're really focusing on the spine today. So we're gonna start with knees bent. So you're gonna plant to your feet. And I actually like to take the feet a little bit wider so that there's space to fold in between the thighs. You can always wrap your hands on top of your legs or behind your legs, but we're really looking for a curvature of the spine. And then if you like, and only if it feels good for your cervical spine, for your neck, you can let your head hang heavy. And you can always play with little half circles, tracing left ear to left shoulder, allowing your chin to circle down to your chest, and then right ear to right shoulder. So you're welcome to bring in a little bit of movement, but eventually you'll find stillness with head humbled to your chest. If this is ever too much for the back of your head or neck, You can always place your forehead onto your forearms, or even walk your legs together and take your forehead onto your knees. Additionally, sometimes movement is needed to settle in. And so there is a somatic movement here where you can always just gently rock side to side. And eventually that rocking will subside. So we're bringing into stillness, but sometimes we need those shifts to just settle. Now, if you are comfortable in this variation of fold with the knees quite bent, you're welcome to stay for the last minute. And I'm in a seated fetal. If you are craving that opening of hamstrings, you can slowly roll up the spine and extend your legs long, and then start to hinge at the hips, bringing more focus on belly and ribs to your thighs than knee and nose together. Add any props or pillows that you might need if you're folding in this fashion, so that you feel supported and you're not having to hold yourself up. So last minute of your pose, you're welcome to choose whatever serves you. All right, if you need longer, if you love folds and this is hitting the spot that you need, you're welcome to just stay for a little bit longer. If you're ready to come out, think about stacking vertebra one by one. Head will come up last. And we're moving to Shavasana. So you can always scoop your hips more into the center of your mat. If you have low back sensitivities, nestle some pillows underneath your knees or your bolster before you lay down. You're just gonna slowly bring yourself onto your back. I sometimes like to put a pillow behind my head if I find the ground extra tough that day or hard. Know that Shavasana might look a little different, so it doesn't necessarily have to be this skinny starfish shape. Feet might be planted, or you can always roll to one of your sides in fetal, but for me, Shavasana is just about finding a place for full and complete rest. So you've taken this hour to really just tune into your body. And I'm just gonna prompt you in Shavasana so that you have a journal entry perhaps ready for after class. But what do you feel called towards? So if you look at all of those moments in your practice where your body kind of sent you this languaging that it needed more or less, or it needed adjustments, or maybe there was a note of you needed some compassion for yourself or to be more kind. So all of that is that internal wisdom. And maybe you just sit with what were you nudged towards tonight. So that might be physically a place in your body that maybe needs more love and nurturing. Maybe it's space in your life where you just need to give back to yourself. You need to listen to where you're being guided. And I'll leave you with this thought that the universe will conspire to nudge you in the direction that you need to be moving in the smallest of ways. And the more that you ignore those nudges or pulls, the louder they get. And the more drawn to something you feel. So that inevitably we do end up somewhere. But what changes is the process of whether it's a struggle or whether it's a smooth and flowy transition. I'll just give you a minute in silence and we'll close off together. If you are ready to move into your journal prompt, you're welcome to just start to bring some small movement into your body. If you need to stay here longer, you can just close off. Those of you that are moving towards journaling, you can just bring yourself into seated and hands to heart center. I trust that my body knows, even when my head doesn't. And I trust that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, even if it's not where I thought I'd be. Namaste. All right. So if you are moving to that second journal prompt, you might just want to look over your list at the start of where you kind of sacrifice, you listen more to your head than your heart, or more to your head than your body. In the second journal prompt, what do you feel nudged towards? Where do you feel like maybe you really miss something, or you really want to go in a certain direction, or you're craving something? So for example, like I'm really craving connection, or I'm craving movement or mindfulness or learning. So once you kind of have written or just put on that paper what you are nudged towards, is now just consider how can you invite that in your life. Okay, so it doesn't mean you have to quit your job and go to school, but maybe you pick up a book that offers you learning. Or maybe you commit to moving your body for 15 minutes every day. If it's connection, maybe you pick up the phone tomorrow and you call someone you love, or you write a letter. So we don't have to make these big explosive life changes, but we can just start to, lean more into the things that are nourishing. Okay. So about 5 or so minutes, but I'll stay with you here, those of you doing this live. If you're doing it in person, recorded, thank you for joining, and enjoy your journaling.